Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Let's wait for a few minutes so more people can join. Hi, Jamie. Hi, Serdar. Hi, Susanna.
Hello there.
Hi, Finn.
Hi.
You're doing great. Hi, Kader.
Hello,
How are you?
good, and you? Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Nan.
Hi.
Hello, Sardar.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good.
Hey, Jamie. Hi, Christian. Let's wait a little bit more for more participants to join, including David.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Christian. How are you?
Fine. Good to see you all.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening. Sorry, I'm a little bit late joining. It seems like those COVID days when it was just like permanent at-home Zoom meetings that ran in from one to another. I hope everybody's well. Jennifer, are we expecting many more people to join?
Yeah, I think most of the people are already online. So we are actually ready to start. We're just waiting for you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So welcome to the meeting, everybody, and we have a very quick presentation, and then we hope it'll be a very broad discussion. So let's just get on to the presentation to save as much time as possible. And I think the first slide is going to be presented by you, Jennifer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yes.
You
Okay.
show the slide.
Technical. I had a little technical problem with my two screens. I have to reopen the presentation. I'm sorry.
No problem, Amadou. So while we wait,
Okay, maybe I can
share.
just go ahead.
oh, Nan has started sharing. Thank you so much, Nan. Over to you, Jennifer.
Okay, second slide. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, this is the agenda for our meeting today, but I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this meeting. Probably we know each other. We may not introduce ourselves, but if you feel that we need to do a quick round of introduction, then we can do that. Otherwise, our agenda is as follows. We have welcome and opening remarks. This will come from David Jackson. Then it will be followed by DeLoG's Secretariat presentation, which will look at the DeLoG strategic direction and priorities. And then we'll have Secretariat update and work plan. And also we will have an update from the working groups. And then after that, we have CID stroke DeLoG annual meeting. And then lastly, we have an open discussion and comments, questions, then updates from members, and we will close our meeting. So this is the agenda. Please let me know whether this is fine or there is something that you'd like us to add. And also I asked if you want us to do a quick round of introduction or just go ahead, we know each other. Okay, I don't see any hands or comments, so probably the agenda is adopted. Okay, we move to David, over to you for the welcome and opening remarks.
Thank you very much. So what we thought we would do during this initial session here is just a couple of pointers for the priority of 2024. But again, it's an open, these are open questions really, and we can agree or disagree on them when we come to the discussion section. And we wanted to get through this presentation really quickly so that we can then have a long discussion on the what was presented, and really everybody can express their views. So in very quick terms, a proposal from the Secretariat for the priority of DeLoG in 2024 is the following. Firstly, we have the Summit of the Future coming up after the Northern Hemisphere summer. And then we have the Financing for Development conference coming up in 2025. So there's a lot of parallel work going on to make sure that decentralization and local governments are part of those key processes. There's a lot of work on the Summit of the Future. There's the Advisory Council to the Secretary General of the United Nations. There's a number of other tracks that are ongoing, the SDSN Commission on Urban Finance, etc., etc., etc. So it's important that DeLoG is kind of aligned with those processes. And then most importantly, probably more importantly than the Summit of the Future, is the FFD in 2025. And that's possibly more important, or as important, if not more important, because Article 34 of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda is up for renegotiation. And this article actually enshrines local government finance and local governments as actors, vehicles for development finance in the development architecture. And I know from experience that that was a tough thing to get. And in the run-up to Addis, in some drafts, there was no local governments mentioned at all in the financing for development agenda. You would think the world was just comprised of national governments, the NGOs, and the private sector. So thanks to a lot of people, including some of them on this call or some institutions on this call, UN Habitat, UCLG, many others, some countries such as Benin, other countries, ourselves and others, we managed to get a reasonable paragraph in there where local governments are part of the picture. Now, similarly, in the Paris Agreement, at one point they were out, and then we got them in. So I think the Summit for the Future and the Financing for Development agenda will be very important to make sure that the DeLoG membership, the development partners on decentralization and local government, are aligned in terms of mobilizing their own institutions in this direction. For example, Canada is a big player in the Summit of the Future and Financing for Development. Canada is a member of DeLoG in the sense of Canadian institutions are. How can those Canadian institutions influence Canada in this regard? Likewise, Germany, likewise other countries where there are institutions that are members of DeLoG, and there's this bigger picture with regard to decentralization and local governments. So that's one thing I think we can work on in 2024. And then we have the 4 working groups. So I think it would be quite interesting to look at thought leadership and partnership around those. So there's the working group on finance, and I think most of the members are also engaged with the Malaga Coalition, and that's a kind of active partnership around finance. There's the working group on gender, and we maybe want to discuss what is the kind of thought leadership and partnership that we can engage in around that working group. So with the Malaga Coalition, we're making sure that local governments are part of the finance picture. With gender, are we engaged in the CSW, which is taking place right now in New York? Should we be? Should we be trying to feed up through the members of DeLoG into that agenda? Is there another one that we should be involved in? And then there is the working group on post-conflict. And again, there are in fora on post-conflict. Should we be in the same way working with the members of DeLoG to influence upwards their institutions, how we get involved in to emphasize the role of local governments and decentralization in post-conflict recovery, etc. That was a big thing at one point a few years ago, less so now. Should we be looking at that? And then we've also been proposing this, the working group on local democracy. So local democracy is a huge topic, I think, particularly with regard to the increasing lack of legitimacy of the state, lack of confidence in government institutions, the kind of misinformation and the prevalence, of more autocratic styles of government, let me put it that way. And this is, to my personal mind, this is very worrying. And again, local governments and decentralization are a way to counter that, sometimes in a very smooth way, where they're not necessarily challenging the status quo, but they are softly suggesting that there can be more than one center of power. There can be more than one place where decisions are taken. And even if not at the central level, you can at the local level have democracy and openness when it comes to government decisions. So I think the local democracy is a very good working group theme. But then what is the constituency, the broader constituency that plays into? What's the equivalent of the Malaga Coalition for that, or the equivalent of CSW for that? That's another topic. So thought leadership and partnership around the 4 working groups and how we develop that out. And then the final priority, stabilizing the secretariat and the membership. So thank you for the Secretariat. The next slide will be what we've done since we have been managing the Secretariat, and thank you for your confidence in us. But of course, you know, we need to stabilize the funding of the Secretariat. We need to stabilize the membership, and we need to come up with a stronger DeLoG at the end of 2024, a DeLoG that is, I think, ready for the next 5 years. So I'd like to make that the priority, that by the end of 2024, we have a plan for the next 5 years of DeLoG around these priorities. So these are the 3 proposals for the priorities, and we commit ourselves as a Secretariat to really fully push for them, or whatever else you may instruct us to do as priorities. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the next slide. And then if you bear with us, there's only 2 or 3 more slides, and then we'll go to the discussion. And then we can come back and look at all of this together. Over to you. I think it's Amadou next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, David. So the transition between UNCDF and GIZ has been going on since summer 2023. So it had involved really multiple meetings with the GIZ teams for the trainings and the handover of assets like you know, social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, the website, the CRM, the mailing list, etc. So we had a lot of back and forth, and really, I mean, we extend really our thanks to the GIZ Secretariat that was really tremendous, very patient with us, and always there for any need. We had some back and forth with the mutual legal departments to really ensure that we had a clean and transparent transfer of data. So the latest rights of use contract was signed recently, and this will allow us to start using the newsletters and the contacts, and we'll be able really to leverage the wider audience. That's really important for this year. Working groups also that gathered multiple times, the local finance and the local democracy group had 2 meetings since then. Gender had 1 meeting, but as you know, Pascal Lavoie has left as his role as working group leads. We will talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But yes, the working groups has been going on. On the sideline, we also had strategic support groups meetings. We met several times to discuss the strategy. And also we met with the CIB team to discuss the annual meeting organization. Now you can go to the next slide. So in terms of key events of the year, like David mentioned, we have identified several ones: the CSW, the FFD Forum, of course, our annual meeting in Barcelona, which is very important, the HLPF, the Summit of the Future, and the World Urban Forum. I'd like to say that feel free to send us any event that should be tracked regarding either the working group thematics or anything that is relevant to the DeLoG Decentralization and Local Governance agenda, so we can highlight them. We have a section on the website for which you can send relevant event, course, webinars that you want us to advertise for, and anything we can do via mailing list, newsletter. These are the assets of the network that you can that we can leverage. So I invite you to not hesitate anytime you need info to be shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amadou. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give you a quick update on the plans, our work plan for this year. So in terms of the meetings, we plan to have this all-member meeting every 6 weeks from now. So it's roughly, you know, once every month. And actually, the calendar invites have been sent out by Amadou to everyone to hold your calendar. Then in terms of a strategic support group meetings, we plan to have it every quarter, as well as the working group meetings. and the communications will follow after this meeting. Then we wanted to continue with some of the legacy initiatives from GIZ. We would like to continue on the DeLoG in dialogue conversations. So this is more of a conversation and exchange to showcase members, your projects, your approach, to share the knowledge and exchange with the other members. And we plan to do this every quarter. Then we also wanted to have this local heroes interviews. We wanted to interview some of these experts in different thematic areas, and then feature them on our website and within the network. So this will also be every quarter. Then, of course, we also have the newsletter. So this is really a good opportunity to shed light on any of your updates, initiatives related to decentralization and local governance. And as Amadou mentioned, please feel free to send us any updates, information that you think can be relevant. And this newsletter will come after each network meeting, roughly every 6 weeks as well. Then over to you, Jennifer.
You may be muted, Jennifer.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Nan. So at this time, we would like to invite the working groups to give us updates, each maybe 3 minutes. So we start with the first one, inclusive local finance. Let me see if Elton is online.
Yeah, I don't think he's here.
Who is online for the first working group, inclusive local finance? Anyone online? Any member of the group? Looks like there is no one. Okay, then the next group is local democracy. I think we have Anna Marie online.
Hi, everybody. I'm here a little bit by a surprise. I got the email to the old email of ICLD. So I was working, sharing this group on local democracy until I finished my appointment at ICLD a couple of, like a month ago. So I work now at Lund University as a senior lecturer. And so we are in the process, and I guess with DeLoG, to finding a new organization that can share this working group. The work that we were doing was pretty much bringing different actors that are very interested in issues of local democracy. We share and co-organize different events, such as panels with mayors and local democracy talks. And a little update from ICLD, I see that one of my colleagues is here, Susanna, is that we're going to have something called the Local Democracy Academy this year. So I will put in the chat a link to the application. So feel free to share in your networks. Yeah, and I think that we pretty much try to align it with the different work that we were doing. So this has been what we have done. And before I finalize my role, there was a lot of interest in the group about how different donors and agencies were working on reconstruction and post-conflict decentralized governance in Ukraine. So it was highlighted like the large Swedish strategy for Ukraine, but also there were interests from many others about that. I stay there.
Well, thank you very much, Anne-Marie. I think what you've highlighted is very important, and you can see that now we have a new working group on crisis and post-conflict resolution. It ties in very well with what you have just mentioned about Ukraine. So we can move to the next group on agenda. Gabi, are you around?
So
Yeah, so for Gabi,
Gabi
this
Gabi
is
is
a
not here.
suggestion. We are suggesting that maybe Gabi takes over the chair of this group, but if there is any member of the group, please go ahead. Okay, wow, it seems the groups are not. Maybe next time we will do better. We will first do our homework. Yeah, okay, so we have then proposed a new group, and we are suggesting that on top of the chairs of the groups, we should have the co-chairs or co-chairpersons for the groups. If this idea is welcome, then we will go ahead and implement it so that every time we have meetings, at least one of the chairpersons is around. And then we also would like your suggestions on this new working group, if it's okay with you that we have this group, or you want us to make some changes, we can do that. And this is all done in the context of what David mentioned about the thought leadership and partnerships around these 4 working groups, to make it work for us and help us, reach the audiences that we are serving. So, colleagues, I don't know whether you have any comments on these working groups before we move to the next slide.
Maybe Jennifer, if we go to we can wrap all the discussions all in one, I think is probably the best way to do it, if you don't mind. So
Okay.
then we can actually manage to cover everything in the same meeting. Because
Okay.
we've only one more slide to go. Over to you.
Okay. Next slide.
Yes, so as Amadou already mentioned, some of the key events this year, and one of them is the CIB DeLoG annual meeting. And this really came from the success from last year, the successful collaboration between the 2 institutions. And we would like to continue this as a tradition. So I had the pleasure to meet Naila and Finn at the UCLG retreat, and we had a brief discussion, initial one. So now I'd like to invite them to give us some updates on this. Naila, over to you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Nan. Thank you for giving me the floor. Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's doing fine. Indeed, we have been discussing and coordinating regarding the second edition of the DeLoG's CIB annual meeting that will take place in Barcelona, 27, 28, and 29th of May. We have been also exploring the themes of common interest. And I recall one of the meetings we already had with DeLoG, there was the subjects related to democracy, but also post-conflict, conflict, resilience, and crisis came also out to be one of those interesting themes. And now we are trying to put together a good program. We are very grateful to the Diputación of Barcelona, the city of Barcelona. They have secured the venues for us there. And there will be the program is on 3 days, so there will be the traditional CIB annual meeting with the fixed agenda items regarding the sharing of knowledge, as you know, the CIB network and network practitioners of international cooperation for development from local governments. And the CIB annual meeting is to really be able to reflect with each other on our challenges, but also the solutions as practitioners for development. So we keep that very high on our agenda. But also try to reflect on the trends of international cooperation for development and in which way we can support also the narrative of UCLG. As David mentioned, there is the Summit of the Future and other international and UN big event this year. and the CIB has a role to be a power of proposition and advocacy also with the new CLG for international cooperation for development. So this agenda, we are working on it, and I can give the floor later to my colleague Finn to update us on the agenda. But of course, the DeLoG colleagues are welcome to attend. And we will have a day that is really focusing on common interest, common narrative. And I would like to congratulate David and the team of UNCDF for the effort to also stabilize and continue supporting the DeLoG as a secretariat. Because from our perspective as CIB members, we really hope to continue this collaboration with an existing network of from DeLoG, because like this, we are able really to mutualize and be beneficial to each other's narrative from each other's perspectives. So this is what I wanted to share with you. And if you would like to let me maybe give the floor to my colleague Finn, if there are other things that I missed to share about the annual meeting in Barcelona. Finn, would you like to share something?
Thank you very much, Naila, and also thank you very much to the DeLoG team. I would like to keep it brief. Just like Naila said, I would like to underline that we really appreciate and underline the importance of creating this this continued space between the CIB membership and the DeLoG membership to engage in the definition of this joint narrative. And for some more practical information, this week we will be sharing a first draft version of the program, which we will be building together with the members the coming weeks, as well as some logistical information. So the invitation letter and a list of suggested hotels for the meeting itself. Thank you very much.
So this is
Thank
from
you.
our side. And if there's any questions or so the Secretariat, Finn, and the colleagues are really working hard to finalize the agenda. And looking forward also to carry on with the DeLoG Secretariat, the discussion about the agenda of Pacific Day together with our joint program. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Naila and Finn, for these updates. I'd like to invite all the members to think of, any specific topics or issues that you would like to discuss in the annual meeting. And while we are still in the process of finalizing and developing the agenda, we will definitely take into consideration. So with that, I'm handing it over to David to have the open discussion.
No, thank you. So we tried to get through that as quick as possible. No, without dwelling on anything. There's a lot of very important issues there. So when we were planning this agenda, we also realized that members like to give updates. But the risk is that if we go to members' updates now, then we will finish the meeting without having discussed anything, because members will just provide their very valuable detailed updates and we won't have discussed the topic. So what I'm going to propose, just as chair, is that we have an open discussion now, and we organize that around 2 or 3 different areas. One is the strategy for 2024, 2 the working groups, 3 the annual meeting, and we move through those 3 topics, and then we have the members' updates. Any comments on that structure first before we go to the actual conversation itself? Christian.
Yes, now, sorry. Thanks so much, David and colleagues for inviting and also preparing this meeting. I just wanted to, and maybe David, excuse me, it's already a reflection. I like the structure and I like the space now to exchange. And you mentioned something very important regarding the working groups, and I think the question that you raised was, are there any other conferences or major events that we need to gather around within those working groups? I think this is an excellent way to strengthen the collaboration on a very specific theme within the network. Secondly, I'd like I wanted to comment on what Naila mentioned regarding the CIB DeLoG cooperation and the chance to meet in Barcelona aside of the annual meeting of CIB. I think this is an excellent moment that will allow us to really, and you mentioned, David, like plan the next 5 years and really structure around those major events, FFD, Summit of the Future, etc. So I also really like that, and I personally also believe that last year when we started with this like joint gathering, it was about the idea of integrating the communities, and there are even more communities that maybe should be part of the conversation to strengthen the joint narrative. And I think Naila, you mentioned that. So in this regard, I'm very happy to hear that, and that the plan is still going on to meet in Barcelona end of May. I also see Jamie, also good to see you, Jamie. And I think there's also a chance to see how we can join efforts and cooperate around the topics, but also integrating communities. Yeah, so in this regard, many thanks for all the overview and preparing this meeting. I stop here. I just wanted to reflect, sorry.
No problem at all. And thank you so much, Christian, for that reflection. Very clear. So perhaps then we'll open the floor. I mean, let's broadly keep to those 3 buckets. So if you have something to say about the CIB joint meeting and the annual meeting, maybe hold your fire, and we'll make sure that we get through to that. So the first on the 3 priority items, do we have broad agreement that we will put our extra work in as a secretariat on those 3 items? Maybe you could throw up that first slide again, Nano, Amadou, while we're speaking, so you can just see, remind us as what the 3 items are. Naila, over to you.
Thank you, David. Briefly, I just wanted to also share that my colleague Gaby, my co-chair on CIB, she couldn't make it today as they have a really free week in Canada at the moment for school and everything, so she couldn't make it today. But on behalf of the CIB leadership and the secretariat, I wanted to share a reflection on the topic on gender. I know that the FSAM have been sharing it, and I think it would be really good to also connect with Gaby from FSAM to check the continuity of that sharing working group, because I do believe they're still interested in that. But also when they come also connecting, and this is also how we, as I said, mutualize our efforts. At the CIB, which we have been always doing it between the CIB and the DeLoG, at the CIB also gender is very important to our work. We have a gender knowledge hub that have been always connecting dots there. So I would definitely recommend also to look also into those connecting dots when it comes to some specific topics, and see in which way the CIB can be of use and meaningful. For example, the gender knowledge hub that we set. And I do believe also for the others, I mean, resilience, our annual plan this year, also we're focusing on resilience and climate adaptation. So I do believe not only for the CIB, but just the reflection with you and recommendation to look on those different topics where we can connect with the extended network and where we can maybe be lifted or lift others when it comes to maybe activities. So this is what I wanted to share, this to keep in mind for the planning for this, for the priority of 2024.
Very clear. So I see kind of we have the 4 working groups, those themes, and you're saying kind of bounce those off CIB a little bit more. I think is what I'm hearing from you, kind of that we are more proactive to engage with CIB in the working groups, in those 4 working groups. Would that be a correct summary of what you're saying?
Actually, what I wanted to say is to keep on the tradition of connecting with each other on that. And then because I could see in your priorities, the gender, like the thoughtful leadership and partnerships. So I just wanted to, on the part of partnerships, there is already a tradition of connecting with CIB, but I do believe also with others, and I would give the floor to others. So the idea is in that perspective of, enhancing those working groups, it will be always good to keep the tradition of connecting either on activity-wise or publication, or so this is what I wanted to say.
Very clear. I'm so making a note of this. There's very clear. Thank you so much indeed, Naila. Jamie, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, David. Hello, everyone. On the first topic, I believe, David, you mentioned we'll split the conversation into three buckets. On the strategic interaction, what I wanted to share is remind everyone that actually LPSA had a memorandum of understanding with the DeLoG Secretariat when it was housed with GIZ, and we'd be, of course, keen to renew that if that's necessary now that the Secretariat has shifted to New York. Part of, I think, the conversations that we were involved in the past were about contributing to the discussion in helpful ways. For instance, what you highlighted, I think, are very good things to do, reaching out within particularly the development partner community. I recall in Marrakesh during some of the conversations, some of the discussions suggested that around topics of mutual interest, there were knowledge gaps, and LPSA, I think, is well positioned to help fill some of those. So to the degree that around topics of mutual interest, as Naila mentioned, some of which may be gender or the new ones that are perhaps being brought up, and we can build certainly on our working groups there, to the degree that LPSA might be able to assist in filling some of the knowledge gaps that exist through either knowledge sharing or knowledge development. I think that would be a very useful area of collaboration in addition to the kind of more donor-facing activities that you outlined earlier. Let me stop here, but happy to chime in on the working groups in a moment.
No, well noted. So I'm just jotting down the points people are making here, so they'll go straight into the minutes. Well noted on those 2 points, Jamie. So what I'm hearing is we pretty much stick with those three strategic areas of strategic focus, but there's some nuances that are coming in, and we'll address those. Would anybody else like to comment on the areas of strategic focus that Nana's kindly put there as the in the chat box? If not, we'll move on to the operation of the working groups. The floor is open on the first bucket. Okay, asking two, asking three. Okay, sold. So the gavel has fallen, and thank you so much for endorsing those areas of strategic focus with those nuances that have been raised. Now on to the working groups. So yes, unfortunately Elton can't make it from the finance working group, so that's a shame, but he's active, he's around as I understand it, so that's not doesn't mean to say that working group has fallen, but we didn't want to speak for him. We wanted to let the working group speak for itself. And then we have the other working groups. Maybe Nana, if you could just remind us, just type their names in the chat there. So any comments or thoughts on the working groups, their operation, how they relate to the areas of strategic focus, how they relate to the annual meeting? The floor is open on the working groups. Jamie.
Not surprising, perhaps. Good. I just want to make sure, again, to renew a conversation we started last year in Marrakesh, or even before Marrakesh, to renew and emphasize that, again, LPSA would like to ensure coordination with DeLoG, UCLG, CIB, and other partners that are working in this space, and particularly with respect to working groups. I think there's an opportunity here to avoid duplication. As you may know or may not know, we have 7 up and running working groups. We've had over 12 meetings between those working groups in the past year, and there's a large overlap. In fact, Elton is one of the co-chairs of the Subnational Finance Working Group, and we'd be very keen to make sure that that is a truly DeLoG and LPSA and possibly UCLG working group on subnational finance. Some of the other co-chairs there are LOGRI, the Initiative on Local Government Revenue. The other ODI is a co-chair. Her colleagues from ODI are a co-chair in that subnational working group. So there's an opportunity, I think, to work very closely through LPSA's working groups, and we invite co-chairs both from UCLG and its partner organizations, as well as from DeLoG, because there's a large area of overlap. Likewise, we had reached out for our other working groups, which are on gender and local democracy. to have co-chairs from both UCLG as well as from DeLoG. So to the degree that we can build on what the working group conversations that are already existing. Unfortunately, Pascal has a career change, and Ana Maria has moved organizations, but we're very keen to continue working. A lot of the co-chairs that we have are either from the UCLG space. Hemanthi from the Sri Lanka Federation of Local Governments is a co-chair in the gender working group. Agustin Mogalawondo, who is a partner in DeLoG as well, is a working group co-chair for local democracy. So it would be a missed opportunity, I think, if we don't work together on these working groups. We're very flexible. As you may or may not know, our model is that we have a working group coordinator that supports co-chairs, multiple co-chairs for each working group, so nobody dominates the dialogue, and there is administrative backstopping to the working group conversations, and the co-chairs are the ones that set the agenda for the working group, not LPSA. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware. I had asked Amadou earlier to share maybe some of the links to the existing working groups. I'll throw them in the chat in a moment, but I see that as really an opportunity for us not to be duplicating and allowing us to work together as closely as possible.
Well noted, Jamie, that's very clear. And so again, with a view of time, I think on inclusive local finance, that's quite a big area. There's the LPSA working group, there is the DeLoG working group itself, and then there's, of course, there's the Malaga Coalition and our broader work. So there's a lot going on there. Maybe we can focus a little bit, this unfinished business on gender. I think we need a new coordinator for that working group. On local democracy, are we good with that working group? And then do we agree with the proposed crisis and post-conflict resolution working group? I know that some development partners are doing quite a lot of work in this space, as always, because it's always a focus of development, crisis and post-conflict resolution. Remembering ourselves that DeLoG, the development partners network on local governance and decentralization. So that it's for development partners. And so any reflection on having this fourth working group? The floor is open. So maybe to be a bit provocative. Oh, Christian, I see your hand. Is that your hand up? Over to you, Christian.
I'm struggling. My mouse is not doing what I want her to do. So I raised my hand physically. No, I very much like the idea, post-conflict, conflict resolution. I'm coming. Last week I attended a pre-conference for the Ukraine Recovery Conference, and a huge, obviously a huge topic, but also a reconstruction and recovery as part of the strategy to defend. So there's a lot of discussion around and interest within partners in general, but there are many other contexts as well. Maybe we need to clarify in the future, and this is maybe some discussions between the two working groups on democracy and on recovery and post-conflict. So there's we need to be careful not to doublify or to have a specific focus, and then this will allow to join efforts. But I really like the idea of this fourth working group. Yeah.
Well noted, Christian. I maybe the distinction is that the local democracy working group can look at things like good practices in democracy, local democracy, maybe digital, the challenge of AI to local democracy. There's a kind of a whole load of different things with regard to democracy across the globe. Whereas the other one, of course, democracy is a key part of post-conflict reconstruction, but it's really about how local governments can drive, let's say the reconstruction in Yemen or in Ukraine or what have you, or somewhere like that. So, but whether we have the bandwidth for another working group is an open question. And so, Diana, welcome, and as a proud, long-standing UNICEF member, looking forward to hearing your comments and thoughts. Over.
Thank you, David. Can you hear me well?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Okay, thanks very much. I wanted to say that the topic on conflict and post-crisis fragility conflict is very important for UNICEF, and we, from the local governance perspective and decentralization perspective, we work heavily on this, looking at different aspects of conflict, starting from governance structures, strengthening finance for resilience, increasing fiscal space and financing of social services during conflict and fragility. Also moving through peace building initiatives at the local level. For us, in many cases, the local governments are the main entry point for response in conflict and fragility situations, especially when central government structures are not functioning or are part of the conflict situation. So for us, it is a very important space to discuss programs. We, as I mentioned in the chat, we are developing our new financing strategy framework, where subnational finance, subnational local finance is a key area, and that also looks into conflict issues and conflict and fragility. So for us, very important to discuss these issues and to have a working group with other partners, and of course not only UN agencies but also other development partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. That's really welcome. And we may be looking for a chair for this or working group. So if anybody's interested, not mentioning any names, but please feel free to volunteer, just to get things moving. I think what can be most useful about DeLoG, if it really fulfills its proper function, is it is literally a network of development partners. So it can really help when it comes to the kind of work you're trying to do. So we'd be delighted if you could get involved in any one of the working groups, and they will have traction where they are doing something useful. I think that they will, that's where they will have traction. So great. So I think we'll keep that as a working group. That seems to be endorsed. On the gender working group, do we have any proposals to replace the chair of that group? Nan, I think you mentioned that when you spoke. Nan, any thoughts on that? Over.
On the gender group, we're actually still confirming with Gabby, because Gabby is still trying to figure out her bandwidth, if she can takes over. But I see Naila may want to chime in, or Jamie.
So still on working groups before we move to the next bucket, Naila and then Jamie again. Over.
No, I just wanted to make sure, are we sure that that Gaby is disconnected? This is what I wanted to say, but thank you, Nan, that you said that they're still considering. Okay.
Perfect. Jamie?
Just to encourage thinking about the possibility, Jacqueline Matura is one of the co-chairs of the gender working group, as is Hemanthi. So there is already a working group. Does it make sense to use that as a co-brand that with DeLoG and maybe UCLG? Julia Monroe has also been involved in the conversations there. So it might be an opportunity rather than replicating, or if FCM wants to pull up a chair, that's fantastic. So where there's already something going on, be a bit of a shame if we duplicate. If donor partners, of course, want to have their own group, that makes sense. This is we are an open working group. So it is as was mentioned earlier, we bring everyone to the table, not just development partners. So if that is not the intent of DeLoG, I'm not quite sure. At some point, non-development partners were invited into the tent. But I think there we have two very strong partners already who are co-leading a working group, and it'd be very nice, in my view, to use that as a basis for future discussion. Thank you.
That's very clear. So let's circle back to Gabby, and but that's well noted. So let me just put that in the chat, and then I see before we move on to the next topic, there's a lot of people that have not yet spoken. So I assume that there's silence implies consent. Or so please don't be shy if anybody wants to chime in on any of these two topics we've heard about so far. And we're just about to move to the third one, which is going to be the annual meeting. So anybody who hasn't yet spoken, would they like to come in? If not, and well noted on your point, Jamie, I'm just going to put that in the chat here for the minutes. If not, the annual meeting. Do you want to just maybe recap now what it is we want to discuss in this segment? Over to you.
Yeah, it's really to gather some feedback or suggestions on the topics or issues that members want to discuss in this annual meeting, so that this can help us shape the agenda.
I guess when we designed the flow of this meeting, we kind of thought it would also help to flow into the annual meeting, so we could perhaps look again at those strategic priorities. How far are we getting along with them when we have the annual meeting? There's and maybe drill down on some of those a little bit. There is the timeline of all these key events. Maybe enrich that, add COP and other events, and see if we can, for some development partners, if we get the right people there, we can have a kind of a thread that runs through, let's say, 18 months of key events and how that development partner is going to get involved with regard to decentralization and local government, as what DeLoG is about. Who would be the allies for that, etc. So that's one thing we could do in the annual meeting. Stabilizing DeLoG, of course, is another one. And then, of course, we could always have reports from the working groups. So that first slide is also the kind of outline agenda for the annual meeting. But would anybody like to add anything to that in terms of the annual meeting, or make any further points about the annual meeting? And we'll use between now and the end of the time available to discuss this part of the agenda. Before I go to Jamie, only because you've spoken a few times, would anybody else like to come in before that on the annual meeting? Jamie, the floor is yours.
Do I see a tentative hand, Christian?
Maybe Christian. Sorry, I didn't see the hand.
I still have struggles with my mouth. It's okay. No, I just wanted to underline the importance of meeting. Last year we met in Marrakesh, and we had 3 years where we barely met because of COVID, and it was all just working online and trying to network online, and it's a complete different dynamic. And I think it also led to the taking over from UNCDF to really meet in person and to discuss. So I think this year could be a great opportunity to further develop the working group focus, the different leaderships, and, as you said, David, the strategic orientation for the next 5 years. So I just wanted to underline this from experience. It's absolutely important and necessary to meet and see each other and have a coffee and chat.
Thank you so much. Agreed, fully agreed. So in order of hand raising, Serdar, Naila, and then back to Jamie. Over to you, Serdar. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, David. I just tried to came to rescue for Jamie. I don't want him to dominate the conversation here. Just joking. One of the things actually I was thinking, we should be also thinking of, getting together and having coffee and mingling with colleagues is good, but also we might want to also have a higher level event whereby we highlight the importance of the role of local governments in tackling bigger problems, climate change, conflict. All of these issues are basically in the agenda for development institutions. So maybe a higher level, more high-profile event bringing bigger players, the bigger boys into the room might be also a good idea. And I'm happy to volunteer us if we can do something around our annual meetings, for example, when all the ministers and in some cases prime ministers and presidents are in town. We can also organize something higher profile, and I'm happy to host it here. Thanks.
Well, that's a really kind offer. Thank you so much. And that's something we can certainly look at. So that we have that there in the chat for the minutes, and we may circle back to you on that. And that could be a way to galvanize some of the principles of our members, if you like, to thank you for that. Naila.
Thank you so much, David. I've been speaking as the chair of the CIB. I'm not going to put on the hat of VNG International as member of the of DeLoG. And I just joined what Christian has just said about the importance of meeting in person and sharing also not only what we can do as network members for big events towards, for example, something like the Summit for the Future, but also what we do as organizations. Our also like milestones event or activities, and where we can be meaningful to each other. I know, for example, for VNG International, as maybe you are aware, the advisory group of the UN Secretary General, it's a great achievement of UCLG. One of the mayors that in the advisory group is the mayor of Utrecht, which is the president of the VNG. And we are organizing in June a big event on youth as part of really accelerating SDGs regarding youth and the role of local government regarding that. So I'm just giving an example of what we do as organizations. So not just focusing on those big events where we can lobby and advocate, but also where we do what we are doing as an organization and how can we really utilize our effort, our expertise, know-how, network to make sure that also what we do has also maybe bigger scale, bigger impact. So I wanted just to keep that in mind in the annual meeting. So we should not, we should give space also to sharing. At least, I mean, for the network of the CIB, it is really a very important part of what we are gathering to update each other of what we are doing and see how we can connect there. And I do believe it's as meaningful as important also with the DeLoG. This is what I wanted to share.
Well noted. So I'm writing member update at annual meeting in the chat box there. No, I think this is very important, and it's really a good point you've just raised, because if we are going to have this common thread that runs through everything, then it will require the mayor of Utrecht to be on board, so that what he says at the advisory council is related to, let's say,
it's a she. It's a she. She is a mayor. Yeah.
So he or she, as excuse me, quite rightly. So what she says at the advisory council is actually related to what is. I had a conversation yesterday, for example, with the ambassador, the permanent representative in New York of a country, who's going to be quite involved in the FFD discussion. So that there's a kind of, and this is almost from a personal perspective, because in this case, the permanent representative is somebody who strongly believes in local governance, and they're going to mobilize their mission to get involved in FFD to make sure that there's a good mention of local government in the final text. So we need to kind of join these dots. The advisory council, that if there's a senior meeting on the role of local government in Washington, etc. So I think we can use the annual meeting to do that, and to make sure that we leverage the full force of the network. And then that will empower the advisory council. It will empower the negotiators on FFD, because they are going to largely be bureaucrats from the permanent missions in New York, for example, who are not necessarily the people who are well acquainted with what the advisory group is going to be talking about. So how bringing those two together, for example. So I think that's the function that DeLoG can perform, particularly as some of the other members of DeLoG are, maybe through Netherlands, through Germany, through Canada, which are also nation states that will have a big role in the Summit for the Future and the FFD outcome documents. So how we can join those dots too. So I think we can hopefully make this very powerful. Thank you, Naila. Jamie, back to you.
Super. Thanks. since Marrakesh was such a very good convening last year, we're certainly hoping to join this annual meeting either as part of the DeLoG network or possibly even as LPSA, as a partner to both DeLoG and UCLG-CIB. I briefly polled our membership, and I thought maybe one or two colleagues from LPSA want to join in Barcelona. And I think based on what was already said, that in-person meetings are preferable over Zoom meetings. I was a little, I got proof of that in the fact that I got 8 or 9 or 10 colleagues from the LPSA network saying, yes, we would like to come to Barcelona. Not only do we want to come to learn and listen, but we want to share. So I have, you know, a number of colleagues, working group co-chairs who would like to share about their work, for instance, on gender equity and women's empowerment, possibly as part of a joint session, either with UCLG or DeLoG, based on the work that we're now doing in localizing women's economic empowerment in Africa. I had several of the colleagues interested in sharing on subnational finance. In fact, our Enid Slack is checking her schedule to see if she would be able to join. Paul Smoke is hoping to clear his schedule and join. Many of these people, of course, are in all of our mutual networks. I had several colleagues say that they would like to attend this meeting and potentially contribute to the conversations on local democracy, especially in the light of conflict, as was already mentioned as a topic. And a number of other colleagues were interested in sharing about localization, the role of decentralized development cooperation. Perhaps in that regard, it might be interesting to present some of the findings of the UNCDF-sponsored work on the state of local governance in Africa, for instance, which I think would enrich the debate and would have a benefit from a conversation between not only researchers, but also development partners and local governance practitioners from the ground. So we'd be very keen to be part of the UCLG, DeLoG, maybe / LPSA conversation. Looking forward to supporting that, looking forward to seeing if we can bring some of our members in. Happy to support also as a funder, although we're not wealthy, we're not a beggar. So happy to contribute a little as we can to, in addition to travel cost and so forth, to the conference, if that is alongside, if we can do so alongside of DeLoG and UCLB.
Well noted. Jamie, thank you for that kind offer as well. So we may circle back to you on that too. So I think given the time, if there's nothing else, I don't see any other hands, we will close. But many people have spoken. A lot of people haven't. So if you, I hope you enjoyed the meeting. You found it useful. Those of you that haven't, and that we see you again. And thanks everybody. And I hope as many people as possible can be at the physical meeting. And all the best. Thank you everybody for this conversation. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And Nan, please save the chat before we go. Copy and paste it. Thank you. We don't want to lose the minutes. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Amadou, yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye, yes.
Bye.
Thanks. It was an excellent meeting. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
No,
Christian.
thank you.
Really
Yeah,
nice.
thank you for
Always
the comment.
nice to have you.
Oh, Amadou, you can save the chat, right? Well, I think it's
Yeah, I
automatic.
recorded the meeting. Normally it will be on the other side, right?
Okay, colleagues, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.